Hi, everybody. Welcome to Life with Anita. Tonight's episode, we are going to be talking to the amazing author, Elisabeth Henderson, and she's going to talk to you about her being a life coach and also her being a author. And we're going to get a chance to hear about her book, hear about the story behind her book, and also hear about what it's like for her to be a coach. So now we are going to bring on the amazing Elisabeth Henderson to the show. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Nice to have you on Life with Anita.
Good to be
So,
here.
you are an author, a life coach.
Yes.
And so, let's start off by talking about your amazing book. If you want to give the viewers the title of your book and kind of let them know the story behind your book and what made you write it.
Okay, this is my book. It's called The Courage to Own My Own Truth. And it is a book, it's a memoir in which I chronicle an experience that I went through of sexual abuse from a man who is a harpist in classical music. And he sexually abused me. And I wrote it. I started writing it about probably around last year. It's not a big book; it's a short book, but it's a book that I just thought that would be really important for people to know that, like, number one, they're not alone in what they're going through. Number two, let yourself feel all the emotions that come along with, like, the pain and the shame and the hurt and the embarrassment and whatever it is you feel like goes along with it. And that there's hope after all those things happen to you, and that you can tell your story, and that people need to hear your story because there's way too many of this going on in the world right now. This happened to me about, let's see, about 6 years ago, actually, is when this happened to me. And, I had been like just out of college, and I had just finished my master's degree, and I was really excited. And I found the harp during undergrad school, and I had been going through a bout of like depression and loneliness, and really trying to find myself, and it's something that a lot of people go through whenever they're in college, right? Those first few years can be really difficult, when you're away from home and you're not sure what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find something that was like all mine to do, mine to play, mine to share.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the harp after a bout of depression at a wellness expo here in
Mm-hmm.
Dallas. And
Okay.
I was so excited about that. And the people there at the wellness expo introduced me to this amazing community that we have in Dallas. And the women here really took me under their wing and taught me how to play. And then I eventually, a few years later, I started performing in public, at churches, at bars, wherever I could. And
Mm-hmm.
it just brought so much like hope and healing to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a really wonderful, wonderful experience to become involved with such an ancient and wonderful instrument. So, yes.
And so now, as you being a victim of something that was, I'm sure, was traumatic to you, how did you get through that after that occurred? How did you find the strength to become who you are today after you went through that?
Well, at first I didn't want to accept it at all. I'm like, I don't want to accept that this happened to me at all. I didn't, because I was a person who's like very like neurotic and perfectionistic,
Hmm.
and wanting things to always be consistently predictable the same way. And I was a person who, I love, the arts, and I love music, and I love these things. And if I found myself not feeling right, like feeling down in the dumps, I would, throw myself into activity. And that's just what I did. After the incident of abuse happened, when I was with this person and they threatened to rape me and tried to hold me into a room, I went for a promotion at work to feel
Hmm.
better. I got a wonderful new place to live to feel better. I started pursuing a bunch of different things to try to reassure myself, like that there's nothing wrong with me and that I was going to be fine. And this person lives all the way on the other side of the world anyway. They don't even live in my hemisphere, and that I'd be fine. And I just try to like rush into, accomplishing things,
Yeah.
and trying to make my reassure myself that I felt better. And while none of those things were wrong to do, it's just what was behind it was a feeling of there must be something wrong and I have to make it right. I don't feel right, but I got to move on. I'm safe now. I'm fine now. I just got to move on from this and I don't need to think about it anymore.
And I think to hear you say that, a lot of people don't know that when we are victims of a trauma, that a lot of times that is our first response to throw ourselves into a bunch of things. I remember doing that as well. And like that's something that's so real because you just don't want to sit there and have idle time to remember the things that happened to you. And so, as you being a life coach, Elizabeth, what drove you to have a passion to be a life coach? Was it that incident, or was it something that you, for so a long time, you wanted to do?
Well, it's interesting you should say that because they both collided in this same 2-year span.
Mhm.
So when I was getting my master's degree, it was a specialty in business, a specialty degree, right? And I was studying coaching as I was getting my degree because a lot of universities have coaching programs and coaching classes. And it was something that I was like, I found out.
Okay, guys, we are waiting for Elizabeth to come back on for a second. So I'll play some music for you guys as we wait for our guest to come back. Hi, everybody. So we are going to wait for our guest to come back. So give me 1 second. So we are going to listen to some jazz for a second and just, I want to also invite you guys. And now we have our amazing guest back. So we are going to bring her back to the stage on Life with Anita. Hi.
Hi. Okay. So let's see. What were you talking about again?
So we were talking about what made you go into life
That's
coaching.
right.
Yes.
That's right. So, yeah, so it kind of, but both of the two things collided. I was studying coaching when I was getting my master's degree in business at the university, and I found out that I was really good at problem solving. I did really good in the class and in
Mm,
the classes that I was taking. And, I was really excited about it, and I knew I wanted to use it for something, but I just like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to use it for or
mm,
what specific niche, like a lot of coaches are health coaches, there are
yeah.
mental game coaches, there are all kinds of coaches out there, right? Transformational coaches and all kinds of people, coaching
Yeah.
out there. And I wasn't, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I had been studying coaching and I just gotten, out of the program. I had just graduated like less than a month earlier, maybe about a month
Mhm.
earlier from when the incident happened. And so I was still working at my regular job, and I was working in the psychiatry, psychology department at the hospital, and I was still working in my regular job. And I was very in a lot of deep thought about what I wanted to do with it, but I just wasn't sure yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I had started working with a person who had been a coach for a while and kind of like discussing what my strengths were and what things that I felt passionate about or things that I could help people with. But I hadn't decided at that point what it would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how the two collided. And then after the incident happened and I actually developed anorexia.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to stop work for a period of time and go into treatment full time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there I learned a lot of things about myself that I wasn't quite aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't, um, yeah, it was just a lot of things that I didn't know about myself, how I was going about things. I knew what I was doing, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how I was doing things. And I think it's like really important. Like there's a big difference between the
Yeah.
two. And so um, that's kind of where I was. And so I went through anorexia treatment, and then a year later, I'm really thinking about coaching and and working with people in group settings in very minimal ways, just in group settings, just here and
Mm-hmm.
there, on things like pragmatic ways of approaching things and practical
Mm-hmm.
ways of approaching things. But then it like really started to turn spiritual when I was asked to write my book about it,
Mm-hmm.
about what had happened to me. It had this kind of a spiritual tinge to it because I didn't know that that there was like a part of me that wasn't completely present with my emotions in my body. I
Mm-hmm.
thought everything was like happening in my brain.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, I just need to beat this out of myself, bulldoze these bad habits, the wrong thoughts, the wrong feelings, just bulldoze them out of myself, and then I'll be a better person. And I'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
get even more done.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how my mind was working at the time. It's
Mm-hmm.
more like, okay, what am I doing versus like, how am I doing things and who am I being
Yeah.
while I'm going about how I'm doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a significant shift for me whenever I started really like getting into writing my book. And when I was first approached about writing my book by the publisher, I was like, there's no way I'm going to write about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really dark story. It's a story I swore I'd never tell anybody.
Yeah.
I told myself, I'm like, I'm not going to tell anybody this. This is like, it's really awkward and dark to talk to people versus, and even people I know, because I know the people in the community know this person in the
Yeah.
harp community globally know this person. So it's kind of like, gosh, how do you tell someone that someone they admire is like literally a rapist?
Mm-hmm.
Like how do I tell somebody something like that? And so without trying to overburden myself with that question, I just started writing. I started addressing the questions that I think people would be asking when they would maybe read the blurb on the back of my book. Like, what are they like what kind of questions are they going to be asking? Like, what do people who've been through this need to know?
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to know about like what it is to like suffer an incident of abuse and then tell the whole world about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just like something like most people, and I remember my life coach was telling me, like on average people tell their story of abuse either after 17 years or they take it to their grave.
Mm-hmm.
Most people never tell those stories. And so I had to like ask myself, like, oh my goodness, like it was very burdensome sometimes to like sit there. I had to like plan out time to write the book
Mm-hmm.
and tell myself, like, okay, I'm gonna spend 3 hours on like writing on this topic. And emotionally it got to be really overwhelming sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
I just had to keep reminding myself, like, there are women who need to know this story. And this is like back in the like beginning of like 2023 when I was really thinking about like, okay, what kinds of questions would I answer? How would that work? And the publisher kind of helped me with like, okay, what kinds of questions do you want to answer, and do you want your book to answer?
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, yeah, it got to be overwhelming at some points, because it's like there's a major difference between like thinking about a problem and actually experiencing it, re-experiencing it, and writing about it with your hands.
Yeah.
Like people say to themselves, "Oh, I process it because I thought about this thing a lot, or I know what I think about it now."
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard. That's when your brain really starts processing other things even in your life that you hadn't even paid attention to before.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like trying to let the emotions be there. Sometimes I would just like write my book, and I'm like, I would have to have a drink while I'm writing because it just got to
Yeah.
be so overwhelming. It was just,
Now,
it was really hard.
the person that committed this towards you, did you ever end up being able to go to the police, or did you just kind of deal with it and then turn into your book?
Well, I never went to the police about it. And that's because the person is not a citizen of this country, nor do they live here.
Okay.
And I have no clue when they'll ever come back. Like, I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've been back. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But I remember around the time that I was contemplating telling on him, I
Mm-hmm.
started dreaming that this one of the people, a harpist, was telling me that she knew what he did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is a harpist that I like a lot, but I don't know her very well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know her very well. And she just kept coming to me in the dream telling me that I could tell her. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is so odd.
Yeah.
So I told my therapist about it. And then a week later, I called her and I told her, I'm like, I have to tell you something. I know
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen you in like so many months, but I really need to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her the whole thing, and she knew what the types of things he had been up to. She had an idea about it. She didn't know specifically,
Mm-hmm.
but she had an idea about it, about
Okay.
about the type of person that he was. Like, he's,
Yeah.
kind of a slut, but she didn't know he was a complete monster. Like, I don't, I'm not sure. Like, but she had an idea of like, okay, this person's a little sketchy after
Yeah.
he had left. And I told her, and that set off a series of events where he had asked a few people to be on his next records, and they because they knew my story, they told him no.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So,
And so now, you being an author, what would you say along your author journey? And now that your book is out, what kind of feedback have you received? Has there been any women that have read your book that are like, I too now have found the courage to tell my story?
oh, for sure. I've had one person tell me that it was so, they were inspired and encouraged by the bravery, which, I've never thought of myself as an extremely brave person. Do I tell it like it is? Yes, I do. But I'm like, me brave. But she said that, it kind of brought her back to something that had happened to her,
Mm-hmm.
as an incident of sexual abuse. And, she just feels so much less alone
Yeah.
after reading the book. And I've had other people, tell me that they just felt an inspiration to like start speaking up for themselves more in life, period, in
Mm-hmm.
their career, in their relationships with their children, just speaking up for themselves, period, whether it feels good or not. Because I
Yeah.
felt like a person, I just wanted to focus on like what felt good,
Yeah.
focus on the positive things and expressing the things that feel good to me.
Okay.
And when I discovered that expressing the terrible feelings and feeling them and sitting with them and letting them be there was just as important as the feeling that I get when I perform, when I play my heart for a group of people and there's no
Mm-hmm.
applause. or whenever I, go out and dance and
Mm-hmm.
I'm dancing with a person who's a great dancer and it just flows and it feels good. It's like just as important
Yeah.
to
Now,
like sit there with the misery as it is to sit there with your joy as well.
yeah. Now, you as a life coach and an author, for the viewers who are listening to this episode, what kind of words of inspiration would you leave them with as far as from a life coach standpoint and also you being an author standpoint?
From the point, I'll say first from the point of an author, it's I would tell people like it doesn't feel good often to share the stories that have pained us and kept us, that have done horrible things to us emotionally and mentally and even physically just as much. Like it hurts to feel those things, but when you express them by letting them out, when you actually the give the pain a voice, you're releasing something and you're letting something in your body like be there, and you're allowing yourself, all of yourself, to be accepted,
Yeah.
not just the part of yourself that's successful or the part of yourself that won the audition, the part of yourself that did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just letting that part be heard and seen, you're letting all of you be heard and seen, and that's like the most authentic way you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a coach, I tell people, like, if you can focus on de-shaming the times where things didn't go your way, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you were mistreated, bullied, or abused,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like ashamed of the whole thing, or maybe you don't even know how you feel about it. You just know that this feeling is there, and you don't want to feel it anymore. Give it a voice in some way,
Yeah.
or just let it be there, and just don't go so hard on yourself for
Mm-hmm.
things that are out of your control,
Yeah.
because everyone wants to think that when they accomplish something wonderful that it was somehow in their control, and it was something that was unwanted happened to them, like what happened to me, or it could
Mm-hmm.
be an incident of sexual abuse, an abuse of power, or something terrible. Like when it happens to them, then it must be their fault,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I just like encourage my clients to just like understand that accepting your own humanity is a huge part in being successful,
Mm-hmm.
or being able to support your community and serve your community and be there for yourself and be there for others.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things that are just like as equally as important.
Yeah.
So, if you just try to shift your focus away from telling yourself off when things don't go your way,
Mm-hmm.
and realize like the things that have happened that you wanted to happen, and the things that have that you have not wanted to happen that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
they're a part of your humanity, and you can speak up to for yourself, whether you're in relationships, at work, or anywhere else. You can speak up for yourself no matter what. And there can be fear that comes up when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
speaking up for yourself, because a lot of times, especially people who grew up in like artistic environments, like they're not allowed to dissent because they're
Mm-hmm.
fear of losing their job or being seen as weak or in a bad light.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted people to know, and the artists, because we love them so much,
Yeah.
right? The ones who are expressing their gifts in a nurturing and loving way, and they're
Mm-hmm.
sharing their gifts with the world and treating people the way they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
They're very important. The arts are very healing, but it's just important to remember that speaking up for yourself is like one of the best gifts you can give yourself. And to bulldozing your emotions and beating yourself over the head for things you cannot control can really hurt you in the long term. So just
And
try to shift your focus a little bit.
Yeah.
Be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
Tell you the
That
things
is
that
so
we don't
important.
want to happen. So
Bluetooth device
And
is
so
disconnected.
now, as we get ready to end our show,
Bluetooth
Elizabeth,
device is
where can
connected.
they contact you if they want you to be their life coach? How can they go out and purchase your book? If you want to share your contact information as we get ready to end the show to make sure everybody
sure.
can connect with you after this.
Sure. So my book, The Courage to Own My Own Truth, is on Amazon. You can find it. It's by Elisabeth G. Henderson. You see my name right here. I don't know how to point to it. It's at the bottom. You can find me on Amazon.com. My web address is www.elisabethghenderson.com. That's Elizabeth with an S. And if you're feeling a little disempowered, unloved by yourself or others, you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be heard, whether you feel like you're right or wrong or whatever. You deserve to be heard. And yes, we can talk. So yeah, that's my information. You can find me on Facebook at Get Real with Elisabeth, or on Instagram, all things Elisabeth. That's Elizabeth with an S. And yeah, and I'm really excited about all of this. So.
Elizabeth, it was so amazing having you on the show. You have so much to offer. I think it's great when you find people who are choosing to be a life coach to help others, despite anything that they have been through. It has been amazing to have you on the show. So thank you for being here. Make sure you guys go out and you get Elizabeth's book. Make sure you contact her to become your life coach. She's really amazing. She has a lot of great energy, a lot of great spirits. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being on the show. And we will talk to you later. Thank you to everybody who joined and who watched a Life with Anita episode tonight with the amazing author Elisabeth Henderson / life coach. Make sure you guys get her contact information and you guys go ahead and you follow her on social media. So thank you guys for tuning in tonight. See you guys later.